Hey, I'm CARBO Brother. I'm Chris Nelson, President at CARBO. Really excited to introduce the new CZ 452 455 trigger spring kit for your CZ bolt action rifle. A fantastic upgrade, giving you nearly a 50% trigger pull reduction. Excellent, smooth, crisp trigger pull for a fantastic firearm. Let's jump on over to the tabletop, put this baby in. Parts and tools needed for this build: the CZ 452 455 trigger spring kit by CARBO, a 1/16 inch punch, a hammer, your Torx T30, that's the 6-point star bit, block of wood with a hole in it. As always, guys, make sure you're wearing iPro. Before we go any further, let's go ahead and check our firearms together, make sure they're clear, remove the magazine, check the chamber, check the bolt face, check the magazine well. This firearm's clear. Now, since it is a rimfire, we're gonna go ahead and insert a dummy round or snap cap just to protect our firing pin. Before we get started, let's see what kind of factory trigger pull we got. 2 pounds, 7.8 ounces. Let's take one more to confirm. 2 pounds, 3.4 ounces. All right, we begin the disassembly of the CZ 455 by opening the bolt, press the trigger all the way to the rear, pull the bolt right out, set that aside. Now turn your rifle upright, take your Torx T30 Allen key. We'll go ahead and remove these front and rear screws here. This is a real fast disassembly. It all comes apart really quickly. As you can see, there's the trigger guard with the front and rear takedown screws. Set that aside. Here's the trigger plate here. Set that aside. Go ahead and separate the stock from the barrel and receiver group. Now let's focus on the trigger assembly. Before we go any further, let's go ahead and quickly review some of the components of the CZ 455 452 trigger assembly. As you can see here, here's the sear and here is the trigger. This is a sear and trigger engagement surface. Not a lot of surface area there, so we can only do so much in terms of an adjustment on this trigger return spring. There are some competitors out there with a variety of springs. If you go too light, this will make the firearm susceptible to discharge if it's dropped, so be careful. Stick with the CARBO trigger spring kit. It's actually designed to be safe and a nice effective trigger adjustment. Now you can see from CZ, you've got this nut here that'll allow you to actually increase the tension on the trigger by adjusting the nut upward. So putting more tension on the spring, therefore putting more tension on the trigger. Position the rear pin over that hole, take your punch and your hammer, tap it right out. Now go ahead and remove the factory trigger return spring. Now let's set all of that aside and take a look at our CARBO trigger return spring. Go ahead and open that up now. All right, let's go ahead and compare the factory spring to the CARBO spring. CARBO spring on the right, factory spring on the left. You can see a major difference in the tension, the spring tension on these springs. So much lighter. Let's go ahead and put in the lighter CARBO trigger return spring. Now we'll go ahead and install the CARBO trigger return spring, slide it right onto the rod there, insert the spring into that hole so that it's captured, then go ahead and make sure that the rod can go through that hole in the receiver there. Now we'll go ahead and line up the holes on the trigger, take our pin, drop it right in, take your hammer, small little taps, and adjust that trigger as need be to make sure that pin works its way all the way in. This is the easiest and best way to make sure you've got proper alignment and reassemble it quickly. Make sure the pins are all in nice and flush. Good to go. Now make sure that this nut does not spin freely. It needs to actually engage that washer. So make sure that it's up high enough to at least engage that washer. You'll notice there's a couple little cutouts on that washer where it will sink into that nut, locking that nut in place. So it's almost like you need to come up till you get that first click. And remember, if it's too light, you can always come back in and adjust this nut upward, putting some tension on that spring. Now let's take our receiver and barrel group and drop that back right into the stock, like so. Make sure it's nice and even and flush. Turn it upright. Now we'll go ahead and insert the trigger plate like this. That little open portion facing the rear of the buttstock. Then take your trigger guard with your front and rear takedown screws. Remember, the front screw is shorter than the rear screw. Drop them right in like so. Now take your Torx T30 bit, go ahead and tighten them up. Go ahead and alternate back and forth, snugging them up. There we go. Now let's go ahead and reinsert the bolt. You're gonna have to hold the trigger all the way down, slide the bolt right in, make sure the lugs on the side are lined up properly. Now release the trigger, ride it forward. Now that our rifles are back together, let's go ahead and do a function check. Before we do, let's go ahead and insert a dummy round, aka snap cap, to protect our firing pin. Now let's do a function check. Place a weapon on safe, pull the trigger, nothing, excellent. Pull the trigger, nice. Let's go ahead and test this trigger pull. Let's see what kind of modified trigger pull we're working with. 1 pound, 1.8 ounces. Let's take one more to confirm. 1 pound, 6.5 ounces. Well, there you have it, guys. From 2 1/4 to 1 1/4 pounds. Fantastic trigger pull adjustment on the CZ455. We highly advise against going below a 1 pound trigger pull. It is possibly attainable since it is an adjustment nut in there from CZ, from the factory. We recommend keeping it safe, keep it above a pound. No need to go below that. Excited to hear your feedback. Thank you, CARBO Brotherhood, for your ideas and your support. And as always, happy shooting.